Jeff Atkins and I have been talking really for years about aspects of the blue economy and how do we measure it, and he's working on some very interesting methods because the U.S. government, Canadian and Latin America and Mexico don't gather the information in a way that we really understand, and Jeff is working on some new proposals. So I'm looking for a very diverse crowd of people right here going to talk, but they have different aspects of kind of this blue economy. So Jeff, I'll let you take over.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Jeff Atkins. I worked as economist for the federal government for 36 years, most recently for NOAA, for the National Ocean Service. Retired a couple years ago, and since then I've been working as a contractor with NOAA's chief economist. I'm going to be talking about measures of the ocean economy, what we do here in the U.S., of the international work, and as Michael said, how we're working to improve those measures. Alan Jin from University of San Diego is going to zoom in and take a look at the ocean economy in San Diego. Some of that stuff is captured now, and some of it, as we see in most cases, needs fleshed out. Ann Go is from the International Trade Administration, and she's going to be talking about really promoting the growth of blue tech through international partnerships, and also balancing kind of the competing requirements of economic viability and environmental health. And then finally, Jonathan Williams from the UK will be talking with a UK focus on growing the ocean economy, again, which is a critical counterpart to just measuring it. And so with that, I can start my talk. If you want to move on to the next slide. The overview, looking at bullets, skipping bullet 2, 1, 3, and 5. With bullet 1, I'm going to talk about what we're doing right now, or what we've already done. Bullet 3 is some of the research that we're conducting right now to do a better job in measuring the U.S. ocean economy. And the last bullet is next steps. And then that second bullet is about some work that's being done internationally, just to see how what we do in the U.S. fits into that international context. So right now we have an economic data set produced. NOAA leads this effort. It's called Economics National Ocean Watch, or ENOW. It's time series data, annual time series data. Starts in 2005, goes through 2013. 2014 data are currently in production. We look at 6 economic sectors. It's a lot of the things that you've heard described in some of the other talks. The living resources, which is mainly focused on commercial fishing and associated industries, marine construction, that's heavy construction in the marine environment, marine transportation, offshore mineral production, ship and boat building, tourism, and recreation. We produce data at the national scale for 8 regions, 30 coastal states, and roughly 400 coastal counties. And I should mention here that within the U.S., we do also include the Great Lakes within our definition of the ocean economy, but that is separated out as a separate region. So to give you an idea of the scale, or at least how it fits together. These aren't really to scale. But in 2013, GDP was about $17 trillion in the United States. Shore-adjacent counties of the United States, which account for about 10% of the land mass, accounted for just over 45% of the gross domestic product. So economic activity is heavily concentrated along the coast. Using the current system developed by NOAA and researchers over a couple of decades. Right now, we're measuring ocean GDP, $359 billion in 2013, and as somebody said this morning, the ocean GDP accounts for about 2% of the national total, and that's almost identical to what we have here in the U.S. Now, 2% of anything seems like a small number, but you have to keep in mind that the U.S. economy is complex, made up of a lot of relatively small parts, billions and billions of dollars, if you want to call those small parts. But to give you an idea of the size of the U.S. economy, and again, this is kind of that easy first step that we've taken, that the things that are easy to quantify, easy to measure, and as you'll see in a minute, missing some significant components. I selected several industries that I think people kind of have a gut feeling that these are pretty important things: electric power generation, building construction, and so forth. You can see that the ocean economy is bigger than all of those. In fact, it employs, these are figures based on employment. The ocean economy in the United States employs more people than electric power generation, telecommunications, and crop production combined. So, oh yeah, and you can highlight those things. The indicators that we currently use, we have employment statistics. These are businesses with one or more employees that tell us the business establishments, number of employees, wages that are paid to the employees, gross domestic product associated with that business activity. We have a lot of self-employed workers in the ocean economy, especially in things like fish harvesting. And so we work with the Census Bureau to generate statistics for self-employed workers. The indicators are a little different. We have just the number of self-employed workers and their gross receipts. And the data sources, we pull from, these are the most commonly cited economic statistics. You hear them on the nightly news. And we work in partnership, NOAA working in partnership with these federal agencies to generate the statistics that are included in our ocean economy estimates: the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Bureau of Economic Analysis, and the Census Bureau. I don't expect you to be able to read this, but I hope you can see the colors. About this time last year, the Center for the Blue Economy, which is just up the coast a bit, had a symposium where the United States, Canada, UK, France, Spain, Ireland, Australia, South Korea, and the Philippines got together to talk about how we develop estimates of our respective nations' ocean economy. The part at the top you can see, yeah, it's green. These are the sectors that most countries measure. They're primarily established sectors, the things that we talked about this morning: commercial fishing, offshore oil and gas, marine transportation, and so forth. In the blue, in the middle, these are sectors that a fair number of countries count these, but a lot don't count them. These are less established sectors for the most part. And then at the bottom, you're going to see these are the sectors that very few people are counting. What I did then is to take this chart and kind of gray out everything that's not connected to BlueTech. And unfortunately, you can see that the things that are that we're talking about in this room, not only does the U.S. not do a very good job of accounting for them, most other countries don't either. They're not showing up well in the economic statistics. There's a couple reasons for this. I think the main reason is that the work that we do is highly dependent on the nature of the data that we use as inputs, and as Michael and others have mentioned, the economic classes that we use in the United States to kind of chunk up our economic activity doesn't do a good job with the blue tech sectors. They're included in other classes that are dominated by non-ocean activities, and it makes it really difficult to separate them out. Some countries like China have a lot of money to spend on this. They actually just do surveys of all the businesses, and they come up with some pretty good numbers, but that's a very expensive proposition. So what I've done, and this shows the sectors that were not grayed out. And so you have marine technology services. You can see going down through this list, these are these are sectors that the countries that participated in the symposium last year, plus OECD, accounted for in their systems of ocean economy accounting. So what we're going to do next, what we're actually working on right now, and NOAA, if you look at the figure at the upper left, and unfortunately this is probably not to scale, but you see their puzzle pieces. And the Economics National Ocean Watch data set is represented in the kind of upper left. And these are economic activities that are represented as entire puzzle pieces. The economic classification systems that we use in the United States can be used, the economic activity can be used in its entirety and summed up to generate estimates of ocean economic activity. Unfortunately, BlueTech mainly lives in the figure on the right. The dark blue portion of the ocean economy that are parts of puzzle pieces that are partly ocean-related, partly not. We're doing some, just starting research that is a kind of a bottom-up exercise looking at business-specific activities along the lines of what the IU study did this morning, but across the entire ocean economy, to see if we can't fill in that dark blue portion around the edges and more completely account for the U.S. ocean economy. In doing this, in partnership with the Bureau of Economic Analysis, there's going to be an additional benefit. They do these projects, they call them satellite accounts, which I hate being a part of NOAA because we have actual satellites, but these are just accounts that they call satellite accounts. But you can see within their framework the linkages between the ocean economy and other sectors of the economy. For example, pork from Iowa moves through California ports to overseas markets, as do grains from the Midwest. Heavy industry manufacturing also dependent on the ports of California and so forth. So what we did, let me catch up in my notes. We just finished a study. Eastern Research Group took a data set from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and they started with 1,300 industries that make up the entire U.S. economy and about 6,300 commodities that this is a basic data set that's used to generate estimates of GDP. And we went through that and labeled them as, yes, they're ocean related, no, they're not ocean related, and P, they're partial. And a lot of the ocean related and BlueTech activities that you see here, a lot of them are kind of the low-tech aspects of BlueTech, things like winches and pumps and so forth, but a much larger number, again, you can't read this slide, but are in the things that we're talking about here today. And so the ongoing project is to dig into this very large number of high-tech sectors that are ocean dependent and actually going down to the company level, identifying specific companies who work in these areas, begin to flesh out that missing component of the U.S. ocean economy estimates. Again, what Carl talked about, Carl Goldman and others with the IU study, that fits into this. The NOAA fleet, we use a lot of the instrumentation in our research vessels that comes from BlueTech sector. Big data is a piece that we want to include in this as well. The knowledge-based economic activities that come from this ocean data and ocean information that we're producing. And so at this point, quick commercial announcement is that we are doing this work. If you work in that field, please reach out to me. We'd love to know about what you do and how it's related to the ocean. We're looking at a multi-year effort to learn as much as we can about the companies that are working in this arena. And then my last slide, the next step is to go through that list of yes, no, partial items and trim it down a whole lot to focus on just the things that are most important, and then generate coefficients to see for each one of those what percentage is ocean dependent versus not, and that will give us a much better estimate of the more complete estimate of the ocean economy, one that more fully accounts for the BlueTech activities we're talking about today. And with that, let's see, our next speaker is Alan Jin from the University of San Diego.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome all of you who are from out of town to San Diego. Man, it's hot today. The Santa Anas are blowing too, so it's really, really dry as well. I've been asked to give you some background about the blue economy here in San Diego. We claim to have the largest cluster of a blue economy in the entire country, in the entire U.S. And so I'm going to talk about the impact of the blue economy on San Diego and the role it plays in San Diego's economy. One question then that I'm going to ask is, why did this develop in San Diego? Okay, a number of reasons why we have developed in this big blue cluster. First of all, our location on the Pacific Ocean is obvious there. You need access to the ocean for a blue economy. But look at where we are in the southwest corner of the U.S. puts us at the apex, really, of the Pacific Ocean in the sense that we have Latin America just to our south, and we have Asia then to the west. We have this great natural harbor and port facilities. Now, San Diego's port is not as well developed as some other ports that you find on the West Coast. It's not been a major shipping facility. And the reason for that is that we got big facilities just north of us in Los Angeles at San Pedro and at Long Beach. And as a result of that, due to our lack of ground transportation connections, we never really developed a lot of commercial activities. We're expanding as far as that's concerned. We're doing a lot of stuff involving food shipments from South America. Also, cars now are being offloaded here as they have run out of capacity then in the Los Angeles area. The third factor is the fact that the U.S. Navy, we are one of the biggest, we're one of the biggest, we have one of the biggest complexes as far as the U.S. Navy then is concerned on the West Coast. Okay, the three main super ports here, us, Bremerton, Washington, and then Hawaii then as well. Okay, because of that, there is a lot of interest by the Navy in terms of economic, in terms of blue tech research and manufacturing and other types of activities. And then finally, we have some scientific institutions, for example, the Scripps Institute of Oceanography in the Loyola area, which do then a lot of research as far as oceans then are concerned. Okay. So what are the components then of the blue economy? I'm going to divide these into three different sectors. The first is what I'll call the traditional maritime activities, and that includes then shipping and fishing. Then we have the category that'll be referred to as maritime technology or blue tech. Okay, there's all sorts of high-tech stuff then related then to the maritime sector, and then the third category then will be other maritime. These would be traditional industries that include maritime activities, but not exclusively those. And a lot of the tourism and recreation type of activities then would fall into this category in the sense that businesses might also be involved in land type of tourism then activities. Okay? In a study commissioned by the Maritime Alliance, they broke the BlueTech sector into different components, and this then is a list of the components. I'm afraid I blended some of the sectors from the other two parts, the other maritime and the traditional maritime, into the BlueTech category. But you see things like biomedicine, boat and shipbuilding, cables, connectors, things along those lines. An important consideration given our drought situation here in California, now desalinization of ocean water. Ocean science, again, a lot of research being done at University of California, San Diego, and the Scripps Institute. Robotics and submarines, then a big component of this BlueTech, and then also I mentioned the last one, weather and climate science. What sort of contribution then does this make then to the local economy? Again, the Maritime Alliance put out a study in 2012 that looked at this. It's really difficult to come up with good numbers because those sectors that I had previously talked about don't fit nicely into the traditional North American Industrial Classification System codes or NAICS codes. And so you really have to go in and do more survey type of data gathering in order to come up with good numbers. And so in their 2012 study, they found that in 2011, about 46,000 jobs locally then were in the blue economy, divided up into the three sectors that I mentioned previously. In the traditional maritime, about 8,000, a little over 8,000 jobs generated then locally. In terms of marine technology, almost 19,000 in that category, and then the other maritime, about 18,600 jobs. So again, all told, about 46,000 jobs back in 2011 will fit into that category, the category of the blue economy. How does that compare compared to San Diego's economy then overall? Not a great percentage, but 4%. Yeah, that's a solid number in terms of employment. We have over 1.2 million people then employed in San Diego County, and as a result of that, the 46,000, roughly about 4% then of the employment share in San Diego. What are some of the key types of jobs that would be found then in this economy? You see that this here shows you four types of jobs that I have selected out from that 2011 study. You see that shipbuilding leads the way, over 6,000 people out of that 46,000 that employed then in the shipbuilding category. Next largest then is testing labs at a little bit over 3,500, and then physical and life sciences, again over 3,000 people employed in there, and then engineering services, over 3,000 then as well. Those are among the largest types of jobs then in the local economy. They tend to pay pretty well. In another study by the local Economic Development Corporation, they looked at the annual pay in terms of different jobs connected then to the blue economy. And this is a more recent study, just published, I think, earlier this year. But that first one, if you can't read the thing at the bottom, search, detection, and navigation instruments. So again, this will be your submarines and then the undersea type of instruments there. here, average pay over $100,000 a year in that particular sector. So those are good, really good upper middle class type of jobs. The other ones are not bad as well. Shipbuilding and repair, you see, will pay over $60,000, as does navigation services then to shipping. We saw that shipbuilding and repair employed over 6,000 people. So you got 6,000 people making on average about $60,000 a year. That's a solid a group of people then in the middle class in San Diego. Some of these other categories then, as we go down, other support related then to water transportation, over 50,000, and then a couple more over 40,000, port and harbor operations, and then finally boat building as opposed to shipbuilding there, recreational boat construction then. All told then, the revenue, on the revenue side, the sectors combined generate about $14 billion in revenue. There are some difficulties in calculating, the traditional measure of economic activity. At the national level, be gross domestic product. At the regional level, be gross regional product. Difficulty in terms of gathering the data necessary then to put this into the context of the gross regional product. But as an alternative then, we've got some numbers about the revenue generated then by each of the sectors. You see that the traditional maritime is a small part of that, about 10% of the total revenue generated, about $1.4 billion. It's the other two sectors, though, that generate the most revenue. Marine technology at this point generated about $6 billion, a little bit over $6 billion in terms of revenue. And that's bound to grow then in the future. In the other maritime category, $6.5 billion then in terms of revenue generated. Okay, what are some of the, let's see, did I skip it? No, okay. What are some of the key companies? What are some of the key companies in San Diego as it relates then to the blue economy? And this list was compiled by, again, the San Diego Economic Development Corporation. So my apologies to anybody in here who's left out, but they identified these as some of the key companies as of the writing of their report. Applied Membranes, BAE Systems, General Dynamics, NASCO, where a lot of the ship repair and construction goes on. Hydronautics, Ocean Aero, who's I saw as one of the exhibitors here, as is Orca Maritime, the Marine Group, Poseidon Resources, and you see the list. Teledyne Cibotics. I think somebody from there is on one of these panels. Okay? And some of the key players, most of them in again the BlueTech category of those three categories. Okay? And then finally, what are some other impacts as it relates then to the blue economy? It's been estimated about 1,400 firms in San Diego itself are connected then to the blue economy. Some of these are just small, maybe sole proprietorships or small partnerships, but they also range in size to companies then like General Dynamics, NASCO. They were able to estimate the impact to the gross regional product of just the shipbuilding and repair industry, estimated to be about $1.75 billion. The gross regional product in San Diego is over $200 billion regionally, so it's just slightly less than 1% contribution, but that's just from that one category of shipbuilding then and repair. And then from again the 2012 report, it was estimated that about 6,000 jobs be added in this category, spread over those three groupings by the year 2020. We're already more than halfway there from the writing of that report. So in solid position, we've probably added a few thousand jobs in the sector. Since that report then has been generated. So again, San Diego's blue economy in a pretty solid shape. Again, we're the biggest in the country, and we're growing, and it plays a significant role then in the local economy. That's it for my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, and I skipped over the Q&A for my part because I'm watching the clock here, so let's move on through the presentations and see if we have some time for questions at the end. Ann?
Hi, I'm Ann Go with the International Trade Administration, U.S. Department of Commerce, a sister agency to NOAA and some other commerce agencies you've heard mentioned before. I've learned a lot in these several days I've been here participating in the BlueTech Week, and thank you very much for inviting me here, Michael. Michael and I have had a number of conversations over the year, 1 or 2 years that we've been working together, and I have come to appreciate more and more every day just how difficult a job it is that the economists like these scientists and my colleagues here in trying to capture and calculate the impact of the blue economy and on jobs and growth. I'm going to bring a unique perspective from the International Trade Administration in that we do export promotion. And sometimes we send trade missions overseas with a specific theme to certain countries. Some of them could be oil and gas, it could be smart cities, it could be green technology. If we were to do a blue tech trade mission, what would be the group of stakeholders we reach out to? We can't even begin to calculate that. Maybe we'll reach out to the traditional ones that have been mentioned here. But just listening to the previous presentation, he's in the software development sector. Would we have reached out to ICT companies just for a blue economy trade mission for recruitment? Maybe yes, maybe no. We might reach out to them for a smart cities trade mission. So then I thought, how about textile? Would we want to reach out to the textile industry related to the blue economy? Well, think about the things people wear when they are on the ocean, when they work on the rigs, when they dive under the ocean. Would that be in the category of textile? And then I thought, how about we turn this the other way? What sector does not have any linkages to the blue economy? Because the ocean economy has linkages forward and backward throughout all sectors in the economy. You have maritime law. Would we reach out to law firms to see if they want to come on our trade mission? How about marine insurance? Do we want to reach out to insurance companies? So maybe I could ask you, by the time we have Q&A, if you can raise your hand and tell me a single sector that doesn't have anything to do with the blue economy. Maybe that's a better way of asking the question. Earlier in the morning, I had a conversation, very interesting conversation with this gentleman who's developing a moving fishing platform, but he wants to incorporate a greenhouse on top of the fishing platform, so then it's a closed-loop aquaponic moving platform, and that can transport the produce and the fish to wherever it is needed. Okay, so that's farming, that's food security, that's, goodness knows, he was planning to add some fuel cell, energy generation on this platform, so yes, that's energy. He was going to pump ocean water up and desalinate it. Okay, that's desalinization. So I challenge you during the Q&A session, tell me which sector you think has nothing to do and no linkages to the blue economy. So that's our challenge in the International Trade Administration. How do we reach out to all the relevant companies, invite them to go on these trade missions? How do we help promote U.S. exports and technology when we can't even find you? So that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
And the final speaker, Jonathan Williams, and I'll let you tell more about who you're with.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jonathan Williams. I run a small company. It's a cluster organization in Southampton in the UK. And it's a great pleasure to be here with you in San Diego today. I'm going to, in just a very few slides, just firstly present a little picture about the blue economy in the UK, really just to put it in context with the much larger economy over this side of the pond. But then most of the remaining few minutes I'll be speaking, I will focus on how we grow the numbers, because that, in the end, is what we're all here for. So first of all, just again, a different presentation, and I think there's a message here. There's so many different ways of cutting this cake, and we perhaps need to get to grips with that. But this, for what it's worth, is an analysis which is based on work done, commissioned by the European Commission on the right, which is the breakdown of the total blue economy into different market segments. And the color code is the black are the mature sectors, so very much as we heard just a moment ago. The red are what we call the high growth sectors, so things like aquaculture, and in the case of the UK, offshore wind, enormously fast growing sector. And the green are the ones which are really pre-development. These are the embryonic sectors, which are at the moment pretty small, but where we have high prospects. And what we've done at Marine Southeast is to group those into the section in the middle of the slide under those 6 end-user market sectors, which we can all understand. They're clear. We did that because we wanted to be able to compare our economy with other countries' economies, which might have a different distribution of activity. So that's why we did it. More importantly, I think, is on the left, we've got what we call value chain markets or value net markets. And these are of particular interest. These are activities which are supporting what goes on in those middle sectors. So, for example, to do virtually anything in the sea or on the sea, you have to have a vessel. Someone has to build it. Someone has to propel it. Someone has to provide the fuel for it. So there's a lot of supply activity which we capture on the left. And those are of interest because many of those activities supply virtually the whole blue economy. So investment in those areas on the left has a very big leverage in terms of socioeconomic benefit. So, with that in mind, what we did was to do some number crunching. I think you can just about see these numbers. And I'm not going to spend long on this. You're going to die by, with spreadsheets if I'm not careful. So I'll just spend a few moments. The key points here are, firstly, that we've looked at the 6 main sectors, the 6 end user sectors at the top of the slide, and you can see there are 2 biggies: transport and logistics, and energy resources. And when we drill down into those numbers, what we discover actually is that the vast majority of those big numbers are activities which we've been doing for decades. For example, shipping, port operations. We've had them for centuries. Energy resources is almost entirely offshore oil and gas. So what we see is that actually the economy is dominated by things we've been doing for a long time. And the other areas, which are the blue growth areas, are quite small. Second point to make is that we've quantified the GVA and employment also of the supply chain activities, which are all quite small, but which are all really important to our blue economy. Without those, we couldn't do it. And the final point I want to make on this slide is that the totals. So we're giving about just over 50 billion of GVA for the UK, in pounds, that is. And in terms of employment, just under 1 million jobs. And that represents between 4 and 5% of the UK economy. So it's actually about the same as the San Diego proportion, which is quite interesting. When we apply the multipliers for indirect, we see obviously some very big numbers, 2.5 million jobs in the UK, somehow dependent on the blue economy. So for us, this is an enormously important part of our economy. So that's enough on the data. What I want to do in the remaining few minutes is just to really answer a couple of questions. The first is, how do we leverage those really big traditional sectors, which are vital bits of our economy, but how do we leverage the strengths in those, all the expertise, the financial muscle, the skilled people, to drive growth in the areas which are actually going to create tomorrow's jobs, the emerging sectors? And secondly, how do we focus our investment in those value chain markets in order to drive and to create solutions which can service many of those blue growth sectors. If we can answer those two questions, we're well on the way to understanding how to grow our blue economy. So I'm going to give an example. One of the supply net activities that I showed on the previous slide is the maritime ICT sector. And what we're trying to do in this slide is to drill down to see actually what's involved in that, and can we identify specific points for investment. On the left, you've got the starting point for any sort of maritime ICT activity, which is the sensor, which is out there measuring some parameter of interest. That's got to be carried out on some platform. It might be an autonomous vehicle. It might be a satellite. The interesting bit is then what you do with that data. It goes into some sort of data infrastructure. Smart Bay is a very nice example in Ireland, but clearly there's much more to it. There's the vast range of data resources which we've been hearing about earlier today, accessible, we hope, through web services, accessing not only data but also models. We also heard about the importance of models. And so we think this is a really crucial element of this value chain, how we can optimize access to those resources. And why do we want to do that? Because we want to build high value add services. This is really the black box that Jeff mentioned in his presentation this morning, which I totally agree with. The interesting thing about that black box is that activities there can then create solutions and generate revenue from many different sectors of the blue economy. And I've just listed a few examples there. So our argument is that if we can focus investment on some of those key building blocks, we can enable a great deal of value add and prosperity and wealth creation through our blue economy. So that's how we focus our activities. How do we put those sorts of activities together? By building collaborations. And Michael asked me to say a little bit about the importance of collaboration. Our experience is that to build the kind of value chain that you see there, building a consortium to develop a new solution where you need to understand the sensor, you need to understand how it's going to be carried, you need to understand the software development. To do that, you need to create relationships. So building collaborations is absolutely crucial to doing any of this stuff. And our experience as a cluster organization is that we're actually quite good at doing that. We're non-profit. We're an honest broker. We can pull different parties together in order to create a unique combination of expertise to develop a unique product. So, and of course, we enormously welcome the great work that Michael's been leading to build a cluster alliance, an international cluster alliance, which we want to be part of, and also we want our other European partners to be part of. We've obviously got the Pole Mediterranean here today, other partners like Portugal, Sweden, and so on. So that's how we want to focus our effort. Just one plug, really, I suppose, for next year. This is an event which we're hosting alongside Ocean Business. We've invited Michael to come and give a keynote for us. He's very kindly agreed to do that. And that's going to be bringing together a lot of defense companies and commercial marine companies to start building some of those collaborations which can create the products and services of tomorrow. So I hope as many of you as possible will be able to come along and join us at that event. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks, and we do have a few minutes left, so do we have microphones? Do we have questions for anyone on the panel?
I'd like to start with a question. And Jonathan, you showed those numbers, and your multiplier was about 2.7 or 2.8. We actually had a small amount of work done by San Diego State University, and they came up with an interesting multiplier about that same level, 2.8, 2.9, which is a very high compared to everything else they'd looked at. But I didn't see, maybe I missed it, but was there a percentage of what percentage of your local GDP that represented,
Yeah.
both the direct and the indirect? Because when we did our study, as Jeff knows, the NOAA number was $1.8 billion, and we're saying that it's $14 billion direct. And if it's 2% nationally, I think we're probably more than 4%, but, the numbers are the numbers. So I'm interested where you've perhaps done more study over more time.
Yeah, okay, thank you for that, Michael. Nationally, because we're a relatively small country compared to the US, the figure for the proportion of the blue economy to the total economy is around 4 to 5% in terms of employment. But if we look at the Solent, which is the particular part of the UK where we're based, which is centred on the two big cities, port cities of Southampton and Portsmouth, when we looked at that economy and we commissioned Atkins to do some work on this, they came up with a figure that the blue economy created around about 25% of that local economy. So this is enormously significant. And when we published that report, the local policymakers were, almost fell off their chairs. And it's had a transformational effect on the importance attached to the blue economy in local government.
Yeah, and just a follow-up question to that. You're looking at some of the sectors, I'm assuming, even in the ocean economy, are the mature sectors in decline, and other sectors of the economy are in decline. And in the emerging sectors, have you taken a look at the possible linkage between the types of labor needed in the emerging sectors and the kind made available in the declining sectors?
That's a very, very good question. We haven't done anything systematic on that, but we have been involved in a very interesting activity which was led by our friends in Scotland. And they were looking at the what they call energy in harsh environments. So they were looking, for obvious reasons, how they could diversify their oil and gas industry, which is under pressure, we all know, into other growing parts of the blue economy, particularly marine renewable energy. So that work involved looking at some very specific technology areas and types of capability in companies to pinpoint the kinds of companies that could realistically lead that diversification into marine renewables. And I think it was a very intensive piece of work, and it's very expensive to do that. So we struggle to know how to do it for the whole blue economy, but certainly we're learning a lot from those smaller studies that we have been able to do.
Yes.
Let me say something on is this on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Let me say something about that, and that is that the blue economy is likely, particularly on the BlueTech side, is likely going to experience the problem that a lot of the rest of U.S. manufacturing is having, and that is a skills gap between what is needed to deal with the new higher tech type of manufacturing as opposed to the older type of stuff where you work exclusively with your hands or you just need a little bit of skill. Now you need a little bit more technical expertise and so a little higher level of education. And again, some of the key sectors that I mentioned then are going to require then more highly skilled people. I'm going to need then some collaboration between probably the government, probably between education sector, and then also the private sector then in terms of getting programs developed that will train people then to move into some of these jobs in the growing sectors.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up that point about skills gap. The ITA, the International Trade Administration, isn't in the business of addressing any of those gaps, but we have sister agencies like the Economic Development Agencies and others who have recognized that. And we don't promote export for export's sake. We promote export because over the years, we've had economists tell us that X number of $1 billion of export lead to X thousands of jobs, well-paid, high-skilled jobs. And yet now we have high-tech companies telling us they can't find enough U.S. workers to fill the jobs they need so they can produce the goods and services for exporting. So the EDA has teamed up with the U.S. Department of Labor, U.S. Department of Education, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and others, including the clusters and foreign investors coming into the United States, and team up with universities, community colleges, and technical colleges to help each bring a piece of the puzzle to the table and then find ways to get a pipeline of students trained, ready for the workforce when they graduate. We also recognize that not everyone is going to go to college or can afford to go to college, and so they do need to find a way to match the younger population to the needs. And so there are some initiatives going around the nation that's addressing that. I don't think that's nearly enough, because part of the work of the International Trade Administration is to help negotiate trade agreements, and we have seen a backlash from the public, either understanding or misunderstanding of what globalization means for them, and I think this skills gap is part of the problem, and it's part of the backlash we see in the popular culture.